Okay, I don't know whether everybody can hear me or not. If you can, let me know in the chat box if you can hear me. Okay, great. Can anybody see me? If you can, just put that in the chat box too, the answer yes or no, because I can't see myself right now. You can? All right, cool. I have no idea how this is working right now. I really apologize for the problems here. I thought I could do something a certain way, and obviously I am getting schooled by YouTube and its software. So anyways, with that, let's get started. I have a bunch of questions, here from people in our community, and I'm going to go over those first, and then I'll answer any other questions that are in the chat after that. So I'm going to start with the questions from our community first. And the first question I have is from Ray, who asks, my attorney says stay away from using safe agreements to raise money. There isn't anything safe about this for investors. What's your opinion? If you agree, what's a better option? Well, I don't agree. First of all, safe notes are pretty well known. Now, maybe there's something specific about what you're trying to do, which allows you or doesn't allow you to do safe notes. I don't really know, if there is something specific or not. But safe notes for equity type investments are a great tool, and they're simple, they're well known, they're easy to use. I'm going to ask a really stupid question, Ray. Does your lawyer have experience, doing startup investments? Because this somewhat, to me, reeks of not having experience without knowing anything. So I personally am fine with safe notes. They're great to use because all you're doing is deferring the valuation to the next round of funding. And the beautiful thing is they are a pure equity instrument. You can go to the Y Combinator website for more details on this. They're the ones who came up with this lovely idea. It's been around for years. It's great. It's simple. It's well known. So no, I don't have any problems with safe notes at all. I think they're great to use. So maybe there's something there that I'm not aware of. Okay, so the response from Ray is he does, which is why I am surprised he owns crowdfunding lawyers. Don't exactly know what that means, but anyways, the way that I would do it is kind of what I'm suggesting here is safe notes are great. Use them if you can. The only thing I would argue against safe notes is if you're dealing with really unsophisticated investors at the beginning, like friends and family, people like that have never done startup investing, then I'd probably not do a safe note and just simply value the company, give away, if you're trying to raise, let's say $100,000 or something like that, then give away 10% of the company and move on. And if you have like 10 investors all investing like $10,000 a piece, simple, easy, everybody will understand it and it's fine. So I hope that answers your question, Ray. Okay, the next question I have here, and I think I'm going in reverse order of the way that I got them, but anyways, is, and I'm going to use your family name instead of your name because it's an easier one for me to go by, and that's Kim. And Kim asks, we have been talking with 3 VCs, but all moving at different paces. We'd love to have all term sheets at the same time. What should we do? All right, that is a fabulous question. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a layered answer here on this because it's not so easy to get done what you want. If you can, fantastic. That is great if you can. I am all for it if you can pull it off. That's great to do. So the way that we might do this in this particular situation, and this is the only way that you can make this work, is if you really see true traction and people are really moving, this is the thing you have to evaluate because you can screw yourself in the process. But if you're getting real traction and people are really moving towards a term sheet, what you can do is you can set a deadline. So for example, here we are June 19th, and let's say you just started raising money. I don't think I would do it June 30th, but if you're really getting traction from investors and you can see that they're really moving towards term sheets, and this is the hard thing if you've never raised money before, because investors are great at getting you excited and then they fall off. But if they're truly excited and they're moving towards a term sheet and say, you know what, we're going to accept term sheets by July 31st. And if you're interested, give us a term sheet by then. And magically what happens, if there's a lot of interest, everybody's going to give you term sheets around July 30th, July 29th, July 31st. That's the way that you can make this happen and kind of tilt the tables your way. Now, if you don't think there's the interest, then I wouldn't play this game. So I hope that helps. Okay. All right, next question we have, and this is from Tatum. And he asks, our company is very early stage, and we are currently in the process of mapping out our KPIs, with that being top of mind right now. I'm wondering, are there any KPI dashboards you highly recommend, or do you prefer simplicity? And then there's a second question after this. The answer is I prefer simplicity. I don't think you really need KPI tools, quite honestly. Just write them out. Keep your KPIs really simple. You know, don't have 50 of them. Have a few that, you know, that you need to get done. You know, simpler the better on these kinds of things, because it's going to be hard enough when you're starting a company to get one thing done, let alone 50. So that's the way that I would play it. You know, is really keep it simple in terms of what your goals are. Get those goals, start building momentum, and then start increasing maybe the number of KPIs. Okay, and then his next question is also, do you have any tips on automating KPI data entry to ensure we always have real-time information? I don't think you need to do that. Keep it simple. Just keep it in a spreadsheet or a Google Doc so everybody can see the Google Doc. And that's so easy, then nobody can miss it. That's what I would do. So I hope that helps. Keep it simple. Okay, and the next question we have, and this is a long question this gentleman wrote me, and I'm going to kind of simplify this because his name is Kabane. I hope I pronounced that right. And what he wrote was all about equity division, and I think he's making a classic mistake here that I want to point out to people. And he asks, I want to divide up my equity as follows. He is a CEO, he wants to get 25%. Then his two co-founders get 15 each. The employees 5. Then his seed stage investor gets 20 and his Series A gets 20. Well, I don't know whether anybody here sees the problem with that, but there's a big problem in the way that this is being done, and I'll explain it to you, because that all adds up to 100%, right? Well, great. Well, here's the problem. You know, you're assuming that this is what your investors are going to accept. And that's number one. And number two is you get diluted. So the way you have to do this is first you and your co-founders agree on the division, how much each of you get. So assume it starts at 100% and then start dividing down. So the 25, 15, 15, what I would do in your case, Kabane, is I would prorate that. In other words, divide that up to 100. Since that's 60% of the pie, make it 100% of the pie. And see how that comes out between the three of you. Then it's going to be, well, what are we going to do for a seed stage investment? Now, typically, and this goes back to I think the first question we had about investing. For seed stage investments, sometimes you have the ability with seed stage, if you have a lot of investors, you just want to set the terms and be done. So, you know, typically maybe if you're raising a small amount of money, it's maybe you give up 10% of the company. Well, what happens here is everybody, the existing employees, the founders in this particular case, they all get diluted by that 10%. So if the founders at 100% after this round of funding, they're going to the sum of them, they're going to be at 90%. And then if there is a Series A after that, and let's say you get diluted by 20%, well, now you're going to get diluted another 20 more % after that, and so forth and so on. That's how it works. So that's the simple way to do this. I hope that helps. Okay. Let's see what we've got next. All right. Gospodin asks, I believe this is right. Hang on. Yeah, here it is. Gospin asks, what kind of product proof do people prefer? And I think what he means by people is investors. Well, what do we prefer as investors? I'm going to put my investor hat on for a second. The proof I prefer, and I think most investors prefer in today's world, is traction. Now, what does traction mean? Traction means revenue. Paying customers, paying you, the more the better. I recently did a video on this exact subject, going through this and what investors are expecting, depending upon where you are in your process. So the more traction you have, the better off you are. That's what we're looking for in our early stage investments. So do that, you're going to be much, much better off. Okay, so I hope that helps with that. And that's what I would do. That's what they really care about. And then Leo asks, is getting a corporate sponsor like getting a VC? And the answer here is yes and no. Now, you have to pitch, which is how it's a yes, just like you do VCs. And typically, this is one of the things that I would remind everybody here as CEOs. You're always pitching somebody something all the time. My God, I pitched my landlord, back in the day because it was hard to get office space, and I had to sell them that our business was a viable business. So always be prepared, always have a pitch deck ready to go at all times in your company's history. It will serve you well, especially with recruiting, by the way. You'll always be doing this when you're recruiting. So that's the first piece of this. So yeah, you're going to have to pitch. The difference is going to be in the terms and the way that the deal is structured. And there's so many different permutations of this. There are too many to go into. But typically, the one thing I would tell you about corporate sponsors, another word for them, by the way, is strategics, is that strategics typically do not care. They do not care about what the valuation is. All they want typically is a piece of the company so that they can look under the hood. If you're doing something that's of interest to them, that's what they're going to care about. And then they're going to care about there's going to be some sort of side deal, which you're going to negotiate about the rights they get to whatever technology or product that you're developing. That's typically the way that these deals work. So I hope that helps. All right, let's move on to the next question that we have here. As I said, for everybody joining here, if you're not a member of my free community on School, please join. You get priority in these calls that I'm going to have going forward. I'll answer the questions first from the School community, and then the questions from the YouTube community at large after that. Okay, so here we go. So really, there are a couple of really good questions here. Okay, Roger asks, do you have any insight on getting investors even before the pitch deck stage? How do very, puts a couple very in here, early on startups trying to raise funds with friends and family or solo investors for fundraising? Okay, even before the pitch deck stage. Well, as I said, I would be developing my pitch deck as soon as possible, Roger. I think the sooner you do it, the better off you're going to be. It's going to help you. So please do that. I think it will absolutely help you. It's going to make life easier for you. So the pitching piece, I think, is the same, regardless of the stage we're at. The only thing that might be different here is the valuation piece, which really comes down to how we're going to negotiate with investors. As I was describing earlier, we want to keep it simple. If we're dealing with lots of small investors who aren't very sophisticated, and by sophisticated, I mean they're not angel investors, they're not venture capitalists, they're not private equity people, then you just want to set the terms. Set the terms, keep it easy, keep it simple, and that's going to make life easy for you. That's the way that I would do it. Just keep it super simple. And then this thought that I have about always being ready to pitch, I think the more professional you are, the easier it gets to raise money regardless of stage. That's why I'm suggesting have that pitch deck ready, because your pitch deck in today's world is really your business plan. So I hope that helps. And then Mehul asks, it's my first startup, which is in early stage. Does the pitch deck need to be visually appealing, or can it be normal? Okay, this is a fantastic question, Mehul, that you are asking about. So here are my thoughts on pitch decks. In one sense, yes, it needs to be visually appealing, but before you go run off and hire a designer to help you, here's what I really mean by visually appealing. We don't want a wall of text. The less text, the better. Keep it simple. Lots of white space is really good on a pitch deck. Simple text, which means just bullet points, and simple graphics. And the graphics can just be PowerPoint or Keynote, whatever. Just simple graphics, simple text is all you need. You do not need a designer to help you design your pitch deck. The risk with a designer is they're so into the design, that they overlook the importance of the content. And that's not what we want. They'll hide the content for the purposes of making the design look good. We don't want that. I recently did a video on this subject as well regarding that. You should be able to find that on my channel. So beware of this, because we can really screw this up if we're not careful. It's a great question. Okay, let's see what we got. If we've got any more here. And I think I may be done. I am done. Okay, cool. So now I can go to the questions in the chat area. So just put them in the chat area and I should be able to answer them. I'm going to go top to bottom. Thank you, Jonathan, for your kind words. I appreciate it. No, Don, this event has not been canceled. It just was me having technical problems. All right, there we are. So here's Don. I've been in women's healthcare for 35 years and applied for a grant, plus working on a patent. In light of being 65 years old, I question if I have it in me to start another business. Okay, well, I can't answer the thing about being 65 and not having it in me. That's up to you. It does concern me that you're saying that. I thought the question was going to be before I got to the last part, how are investors going to view me? And the interesting thing is that I think the average age, and this may surprise some of this audience here, the average age of a successful startup founder is around 40 years old. You don't have to be 22 years old. In fact, that can be a detriment depending upon what you're doing. So sometimes age is an advantage to you. Don't hide from it. You are what you are. And if you're 65 years old, that's fine. If you want to do this, that's fine. Age is just a number. Nobody cares. And I've also written about this subject as well in terms of this. And, one famous case, if you're familiar with the guy who founded PeopleSoft, and then I can't remember the company he founded after that, Don, I think his name is David Duffield, if I remember right. And he was in his mid-60s when he founded his second company, about your age, Don. And he ended up founding a multi-billion-dollar company at that age. So age is just a number. Don't worry about it. That's my point. Okay, let's see what we got here. Okay, here we go. Thomas asks, I was wondering if you have some other examples of great 7-second intros to decks other than the Steve Jobs example. I personally don't, of stuff that's on the internet. His is the best, personally, because he just gets right to it. And, just to go over the question, I recently did a video on this, on the importance of just getting right to the point right at the beginning and making use of that initial time, because when we're first meeting with people, the clock doesn't start ticking when we start pitching. It starts ticking the minute we walk into the room, we shake hands with somebody. So you want to take advantage of that right at the beginning. You don't want to just sit there making small talk or whatever. Sometimes that happens, totally aware of it. but you really want to start building that emotional connection with people really quickly. So sometimes what you'll see people do, even experienced investors, and by the way, I'm capable of doing this as well, and I'm a reasonably experienced presenter. What you'll see presenters do, and this is what I was pointing out, the CEOs of these major companies, including NVIDIA, which I think is the most valuable company in the world, they'll start with kind of empty words like just welcome to the event. And that, yeah, it's great. Maybe you can get away with it. But instead, look at what Steve Jobs did. He just got right at it, and just jumped right in and said something important to tell people, hey, what you're going to view here is really important. So in the work that I do with the people that work with me one-on-one, the first thing that we tackle is that opening point. And we might spend weeks on that, literally weeks, getting that right, honing it down, trying different things, making sure it's emotional, making sure that we're actually resonating with our audience. That's how important this is. So, Thomas, I know that's not the answer you wanted, but I will give you one more answer to this actually. And this is something you can do: is go Google, or not Google, you can go on YouTube, since we're on YouTube, and search for your favorite startup comedian and watch how they start their act. And I can almost guarantee you, regardless of the comedian, that they get right to it, because it's the same thing for them. The clock is ticking, and they have to start resonating with their audience, or they're going to lose their audience. So look at startup comedians. They are great communicators. The successful ones especially. All right, let's go to the next thing on our list. And Cooley27 asks, hi Brett, thank you for tips. How does one recruit talented people early when the risk of failure is highest? Better to stick to prior relationships where some loyalty can hold it together. Okay, well, that's a great point. And I like the way you're going with this. The more you know about the people you're working with, the less risk there is. End of story. Now, it doesn't remove risk, because you never know until you get into the startup environment how people are going to react. So, but having said that, that's the way you want to do this. That's the smart way to do this, by the way, is just do it that way. It's really going to help you. So that's how I would do it. So it is just keep it simple. Sorry, I'm stumbling here just a little bit. I'm just thinking a little bit more about how to give you a little bit more detail here on what to do. But I would absolutely start with people I know. Those are going to be the easiest people to work with. Make sure the quality of the people is high, because it's super important, because the bar you set at the beginning is going to determine the quality of the people for the life of the business. So if you set it at a level 8, the best you're going to get then is level 8 people for the rest of the company. If you set it at level 10, then you're going to get level 10 people. That's how important this is. So really pay attention to the quality of the people, at the beginning. That's what I would do. The second piece of this is make sure that when you're recruiting people, that everybody's kind of on the same page, that, we're starting, nobody's going to be making a salary at the beginning. And this is part of the vetting process, because everybody has to be okay with that. If they're not, then they're not right for what you're doing at this stage. So I hope that helps. Okay, Kay asks, when adding roles like head of product, CTO, you'd want to attract individuals with great experience. Those individuals may, goes right to the previous point that I was saying, those individuals may earn $300,000 to $500,000 upwards. Is there a norm expectation in attracting them? Okay, this is the challenge, because some people are not going to want to leave their work if they're making lots of money to go join your fledgling startup for nothing. So part of this is, how do we attract people? Number one is they have to be okay with making nothing at the beginning. And what's the carrot for them, right? The carrot is going to be the equity that you give them. So you have to be prepared, especially at the beginning, to give up percentages of the company to help people and give people motivation financially to work with you. Now, some people are not going to be okay with this, and those people are not right for what you're doing. That's just life. You have to find people who are totally excited by what you're doing and are willing to take the risk. Now, one of the things that I did back in the day with my co-founders, and I had some co-founders that could afford not to work and had others that couldn't. With the ones that couldn't, I said, you know what? With one in particular, I told him, you know what? Keep your day job. That's okay. And that worked out really well. And then at the time we got our funding, he joined us full time. So you can do things like that. You can do consulting work, anything, so you have to just be creative. There are no rules in this, but you can't obviously afford to pay somebody $300,000 a year at the beginning. And those people, if they're saying, I got to make $300,000 a year to join you, they're not serious, move on. All right, then Tatum asks, again here, he's got a couple different things. As we look ahead, we're excited about the potential to integrate pre-existing technologies into our services. Could you share any tips on initiating partnerships with established tech companies? And what key elements should we consider to ensure a fair and mutually beneficial agreement? Well, the challenge is, and this came up at the beginning about strategic arrangements because it's essentially the same thing. The challenge here is that in one sense, when you're working with a bigger company, they have a lot more leverage unless you have something that's of such significant value that you can negotiate something reasonable for it. It's such a broad question. It's really hard to answer in specifics. And it's a really hard thing, to do because you have to navigate inside of the company in terms of finding the right person. That person has to be a decision maker. You have to understand the politics of the company, which especially for big companies, if we're talking about multi-billion-dollar companies here, the politics can be extreme. It can take a long time to get a deal done, and it's usually really difficult. And then even if you get the deal done, that still doesn't ensure that it's going to go forward because they have to generate support inside of the business. Everybody's busy. So these are hard things to do. I will tell you, it takes a lot of work and a lot of challenge to get them done, especially at the beginning of a company's life. I know I'm not giving you the answer that you want, but the reality is this is challenging, to pull off is what I'm telling you. I'm not saying not do it, but it's going to take time. It's going to take energy. It's going to take effort, to get it done. Okay, let's go to William. So William asks, are there any tips for raising seed rounds for a hardware product? Yeah, since I did this and I know others that did it, and again, this is fairly broad since we're talking about hardware, and hardware usually means lots of capital spend, right? That's the challenge typically with hardware without knowing anything more about what you're doing than that. So we're talking about lots of capital spend and you put your investor hat on. What are they worried about? They're worried, well, it's going to take $100 million just to see anything. So when I think about the most successful company that I'm currently working with, and I'm working with two very, very capital intensive hardware companies right now. Both are successful, both valued over $1 billion right now. And I think about kind of the way that they went about their business, especially at the beginning and raising money and all of that. I'm kind of getting to your answer in a long-winded way, is they reduce the risk. And how do you reduce the risk of hardware? You do it in software. The more you can do in software to show kind of how your hardware is going to work, the simpler you can make it for people to understand what you're doing, and you can reduce that risk, the better off you're going to be. That's the way you go at it. Make it really simple. Super, super simple. That's the way that I would do it. So the simpler you make it, the better off it's going to be. The less risk there is for your investors, the better off it's going to be. And then, just like I'm describing earlier in this, you need a pitch deck, and you're going to want to pitch them, and you're going to want to explain it. And you're going to show people this is how it works. But, if you can show people software additions, which most hardware companies, even mine, which was semiconductors, by the way, I was able to do this too, was we were able to show people in software what we were going to do in hardware. And that reduces risk. So that's the basic rule on this, is reduce the risk for your investors. I hope that helps. Okay, Jay asks, two-sided marketplace where you're in the middle. Those are the toughest businesses, by the way, to start, are two-sided marketplaces. So any tips for getting your first customers when you're building a two-sided marketplace? Well, it's a fairly broad question. Don't know, because I'm not in your specific situation, but as a general thing, number one is to get your first customer, and which is the way I would think about this in any business, is how do I get my first customer? Not my 1,000th when I'm starting out, not even my 100th, not even my 10th, but my first. If I've got 0 customers, how do I get just one paying customer? That's your mission, and by the way, to show you how important this is, when I got my first customer, when we started out, and I told both of my investors, they both did the exact same thing, which surprised the hell out of me. I wasn't expecting this at all, but this is what they did. And these were VCs and professional guys, very experienced investors. And they both gave me bottles of wine because they were very, very happy that we actually got a customer to buy our stuff. And look, we needed lots of customers to succeed, but it kind of tells you that investors know how important this is, because a lot of companies at your stage do not ever get a customer. So what are we going to do when we're going to get our first customers? Start with people you know. Without knowing anything more about what you're doing, start with the Rolodex of people that you know at the beginning. That's what I would do. And I don't know who the buyers are, and I don't know who the sellers are, and then make the deal really about them. Don't worry about optimizing margins, optimizing profits at this stage. Just get somebody to buy, even if it's at $1. Get them to buy. That's what I would do. So I hope that helps, Jay. Okay, we're back to William. Thank you. Is there any common advice that works for software but is either ineffective or harmful for hardware? I don't know. I don't think so, to be honest. The same rules apply. You want to, when we're pitching to, and I assume this is regarding pitching to investors. We're pitching to investors. We want to show people very simply, here's the problem we're trying to solve. Here's the pain our customers have, and here's how we're solving that problem. And we want to make it as easy, for them to see it. Don't hide. Make it super simple for investors to understand exactly what you're trying to do. And that holds for both software and hardware. And the more you can show them, the more progress you can show them, the better. And if you're doing software, it would be the exact same thing. So I hope that helps. Okay, any other questions that we have? Okay, we have Ray asking, how do we find a list of investors or VCs to pitch to? Well, you can just go searching on the internet. There's tons of places to look. You can look on LinkedIn. You can do searches on LinkedIn. You can go to paid things, which there are plenty of them out there that you can use. There are paid sites that have like free trials for a couple of weeks that you can use, which have lists of investors, like Crunchbase, for example. I think has like a 14 or 30-day trial. I can't remember what it is. And you can use that software to find them. And then one of the other things that I would do is you'll find your network is bigger than you think. Just get in the habit of asking people. And magically, you'll start meeting more and more people, and you'll start getting introduced. If you have something interesting and exciting, then eventually you will attract money if it's right for the type of investor that you're looking for. It just takes hard work, and you just have to ask. And you have to just relentlessly ask. It's not easy to do this stuff. That's the point. It's if it was, then everybody would do it, and nobody's just going to write you a check because they want to. Because out of I'm trying to think of the right word here, but just out of nicety, right? You have to earn it. and you're competing with lots of different people for the funding, and you're competing with people outside of your industry for funding. You're competing with this whole pool of possible investments that they can make. So it's hard to do. You have to work at it. All right. Jay asks, how do investors view beta testers as traction as opposed to your first customer? Not as well. Beta means typically, unless they're paying you, that means that it's not the same thing. So in some cases, and I'm making a generalization here because we're talking in general. I'm sure there's specifics around all of your deals. But as a general rule, a paying customer is going to be worth more to investors than a non-paying customer, because paying means I got to open up my wallet. I got to give you my credit card. I got to write you a check. I might need to get approval from somebody, depending upon what you're doing. It's a real thing. And people think about it. And having people say, oh, I'll pay you, is not the same thing. You have to get people to actually pay. You have to ask. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, we have Stefan asking, I'm starting a nonprofit with a very long road of R&D ahead, including EU research funding, but require additional impact investing in a field with a lot of unknowns. Any suggestions? My basic suggestion, I think, holds, which I don't know when you joined the conversation, Stephen, but the basic suggestion is this. The simpler we can make it for people, especially if we have a long road of R&D, which suggests a lot of money, break it down into various milestones that you're going to need. And the simpler, the more cost effective you can make it for your potential investors, the easier it's going to be to attract money, even for the EU thing that you're looking for money for, because the more you can show them that you're going to do, and the easier and simpler you make it, I would imagine, the more likely it's going to be that you're going to attract money. And maybe you need a partner. I've seen this as well, where, depending upon what you're trying to do. I was just talking to somebody about this today here in the United States about needing a partner for funding from the US government. And, if you need that, it's the same thing. You've got to get the investor attracted to what you're doing. How do we do this? We want to show them that there's less risk. So anything we can do to reduce risk, the better off we're going to be. I hope that helps. Tatum asks, this is a newbie question. Stripe Atlas issued our stock, but from what I understand, we still have to purchase it. Do my co-founders and I simply transfer the dollars purchase price into the company account? Okay, now we're starting to get into lawyer stuff and company setup stuff. And this is a more complex question than I think you realize. So number one, I would make sure, absolutely make sure that you have your company set up properly, because this is where you can really screw yourself into the ground and make it really hard to attract investors, depending upon what you're trying to do. So really make sure that you've got your company set up properly. That's like step number one in all of this. And I almost don't want to answer anything else, because if you don't have it set up right, then all this other stuff in terms of putting money in, I don't know how you divided the stock up. I have a feeling you made a mistake. I'm just going to guess at in that, let's say you and your co-founder, or maybe there are multiple co-founders, all put, $30,000 in or whatever. And I don't know whether you divided it up equally, whether you split up the money invested versus the money that you get as a founder, or the equity that you get as a founder, because that's what you should have done if you did this right. There's a video I have on this on my website about how to divide things up properly. That's what I would do. Okay, and then we have Dahlia asks, should we incorporate before the investment? Okay, that's a great question. If you're trying to raise money from venture capitalists as an example of this, then absolutely, positively, you'll make your life easier if you are a C Corp here in the United States, without question. They do not like dealing with LLCs. Yes, you can convert from LLC to C Corp or whatever, but the less friction there is in a deal, the better off you're going to be. The easier you make it, the better off you're going to be. So yeah, if that's what you're doing, then go spend the money and go incorporate and do it right and get a lawyer to help you. This is good stuff for a lawyer to do for you because it's going to save you money in the long run. Okay, Ishar asks, I'm going to drink some water here. I've been talking for a while. Hang on. He says, hello, Brett. Here's my question. My company provides ELD GPS services to transportation industry. We have 5,000 paying RR customers. I'm not sure what the RR means, but that's pretty cool. Congratulations. My issue is our product is white labeled. We want to create our own. Good for you. I've been trying to create our own product, but it's been a long road, and having more capital would make things so much faster. What do I recommend? Well, this is a fairly broad question. It's great that you have 5,000 customers. And if I kind of understand where you're going, which makes sense to me, is okay, as the next step in what we do, we want our own product so we can get the feedback from the customers and go off on our own and hopefully dominate the world, which makes sense. I don't know what your cash position is in. What's interesting to me is that, which is a harder part of this, because the risk from an investor standpoint is great. You know how to white label and you know how to sell to these people, but now you're pivoting and trying to sell on your own. And those are two different skills, right? Because now you've got to sell directly to customers, instead of selling to the intermediaries, which essentially is your market right now. So that you may not be good at, which is the challenge for you. So if you can prove that point with your own cash and start saying, hey, look, we've been able to get a beachhead here and all we need is more money, to scale, that's a much easier way to go. So I hope that helps. Recurring revenue. That's fantastic. By the way, that's fantastic. I saw that down later in the chat. But yes, that's the way that I would go at it, is if you find a way with your own money, to get out there and start proving that there's a market for your new product, rather than relying on investors to give you the money. I think that's going to be an easier way to go. KJ asks, would you recommend pitching to early stage VCs/angels while in development running a beta? We are in the process of attempting to run our beta with community colleges. I believe it's community colleges in our area. The challenge is going to be, as we go up the food chain of investors, VCs at the top of the food chain, friends and family, which means you, your spouse, your co-founders, other people that who typically don't invest at the bottom of the food chain. The higher up we go on that food chain, the more people are going to expect in terms of traction. It's very unlikely, if we're talking about early, without knowing more, it can happen. Having said that, and I'm involved in companies that have been able to do this. I did this back in the day too, but it's very difficult to do, is what I'm trying to tell you. So it's going to be difficult to pitch to early stage VCs. It might even be difficult to pitch to angels, depending upon who they are. So again, I don't know how much money you're trying to raise, which will also determine how easy this is going to be, to do it. But the more traction you have, the easier it's going to be to raise your money, regardless of who we're talking to, because traction in terms of paying customers, that's where the rubber hits the road. The more of that we have, the easier it's going to be. So I hope that helps. Okay. All right. And then Jamie asks, trying to decide the right equity percentage for a friends and family round. A family member invested $50,000 and I want to make it attractive for them and fair to potential VCs in the next round. Okay, this is a really good question. Because if you overvalue the company at this stage, what happens is that it'll make it more difficult for a more sophisticated investor to come in later. So that's what we want to avoid. So we want to make the valuation reasonable. So typically for these early rounds, a friends and family round would typically, for $50,000, would typically be about 10% or so that you would give away. Might be a little less, might be a little more, but I would say about 10% would be what I would give away. We're also remembering that most of the time, depending upon who the family member is and how sophisticated they are, what do they really want? They just want to get their money back, ideally, and they want to help you succeed. So they're not interested in becoming billionaires typically, off of an initial $50,000 investment. They'd love it if it happens. They'd be thrilled if that's what happens with your business. But right now, what do they want? They're just trying to help. And they're hoping that they can get their money back. That's like step one. Anything else after that is gravy. But I appreciate the fairness piece. That's how I operate too. So fairness at that stage, the simplest way is I'd give them around 10% or so. And nobody's going to care. And if you're trying to raise, a larger round of funding, either from angels as a next step or VCs, a $500,000 valuation at the beginning, post money, it is not going to matter to anybody. Okay. Oh, I see. So you sell directly to customers and you're white labeling a product from another company. So you have all the knowledge and you have all the customers. Oh, so all you're trying, okay, this is Ishar on our previous question here that we were talking about. So, okay, so this is longer. So your issue is just the development then. So you need to build a development team. I don't know, and you said you don't have a technical background. So you need to find a technical partner to help you do this. I can't remember, this is a longer answer and I don't want to waste everybody's time answering this, but the key for you is to find somebody really good to work with, to help you on the technology development. I don't know if you've done that or not, but that's what I would do, based on what you're describing to me. I have an article on this on my website at brettjfox.com about how to find a really good co-founder. I can't remember whether I've done a video on this subject. I might have. The key is in the questioning of the person and understanding how they operate. And there's like a list of questions you can ask for any senior person that you're looking for, because you want to make sure that technically they're right. You want to make sure they can build a team, all these types of things. So that's what I would go through. And that's the key to your answer here. And if you can get that done, then great. Then you can just, rather than farming it out to somebody else, then you just make the money yourself. That's exactly the right direction to go from where you are. Okay. Sorry about that. I didn't understand the nuance of what you were describing. So hopefully that helps. Kay asks, regarding pitching VC, are there layers of decision makers? Yes, there are, depending upon the VC, where you have to pitch group A in order to get a ticket to pitch group B decision maker. Well, depending upon the VC, and the way that you can look at this is by the titles of the people that you're working with. You may have to pitch multiple people, and typically you do, in raising money from a VC. So if we're pitching to an associate or a vice president, that's kind of interesting. VP sounds like it should be a senior person, but typically inside of a VC fund, it's lower than the partners or the managing partner, who typically is the head of the fund. So if we're pitching to an associate level, that person is screening, and they're screening deals for the partner that they're working for. And then that partner, we're going to give information to, through this associate, and we'll get, hopefully, they'll get the answers they want. And typically you want to work with partners, but having said that, I pitched to an associate and then ended up sourcing a deal to a partner, and magically he invested in our company. So, you never know. So look at the titles of the people you're working with. That'll tell you. And then even if you're pitching to a partner, typically the final stage, if we're pitching to a large VC fund, is going to be pitching to the whole partnership. And then after that point, typically there may be diligence items that you have to fulfill depending upon the VC, and then you would get a term sheet. So I hope that helps. Okay, Mohammed asks, what's some of the subscription companies you invested in? That's an easy answer, by the way. And what some of the best to go-to-market models you've seen thus far? The answer to the first question is none. I only invest in things that I know and have experience in, and I have no experience in that. So I do not invest in that particular area. So that's my answer. The best models are the simplest models, especially for business. Keep it simple. The more complex the model is, the more likely you are going to fail. I hope that helps. Jane says, thank you. Ishar says yes. All right, let's see if we've got any more questions. Let's see, here we go. Thank you. Ishar says you're reaching out to me on my website. Great. Can't wait to hear from you. Okay, well, we're at the top of the hour. If there are any other questions, I'll keep going for a few more minutes because I know I screwed up at the beginning of this. So be happy to answer any more questions. Put them in the chat box, and I'll be happy to answer questions for a few more minutes. You just detailed the VC pitch process through term sheet. Average timeline. Oh God. Okay. Well, there was a question at the beginning about how do I get investors to speed up? And part of the challenge of dealing with VCs is that unless you have a forcing function, or unless you're in a space that they are just gaga over, and right now, the market's kind of soft. So there's no real impetus to chase deals. So, typically it could take months. And this is part of the challenge when we're raising money. The typical timeline, is about 6 months to raise money. That's typical, but it can take longer or it can take shorter. That's average. So what would I plan on? Plan on a year to raise your funding. And just as an aside, it took me 2 years to raise my first funding. It's hard. It's not easy. Nick asks, I am at a crossroads. I have a very simple prototype product idea. It is a hybrid of two industries, meaning it will establish its own market, which puts me in a conundrum as it's projected to make such a large return in such a short amount of time. It's something everything will want to take. The issue I have is the upfront amount required for plastic injection molding. Okay, well, this goes back to the same thing. We put it a different way than I put it previously when this question has come up today. Unless you are a known entity. In other words, think like, just to use a big name, if we're like Elon Musk, for example, or Steve Jobs, or somebody that's really well known, or Mark Zuckerberg, or somebody like that who's really well known. And maybe they don't want to use their own money for investing, but has a track record of success, then you're going to be able to raise money, based on your idea. And let's say it's the greatest idea in the world. Then you can raise money. Otherwise, it's really difficult. Now, if we're talking plastic injection molding, I don't know how much that costs. It doesn't sound like it costs millions, but maybe it does. But again, if we're going outside of our friends and family, the bar keeps going up and it gets harder. So the more you can do without having to spend money, the better off you're going to be. The easier you can prove things, $500,000. Well, you're getting into a reasonable amount of money. So unless you've got a rich uncle, who's willing to give you the money, it's going to be hard. It's the chicken and the egg. I get the thing. You've got the greatest thing in the world. I understand, but it's still going to be really hard. So maybe find a way to do it with a smaller amount of money just to prove out the idea, or get people to pay you in advance if it's that great. That's another way to fund things. That's what I would do. Okay, let's go to the next question here. Jay asks, any tips you recommend for someone pitching as an early stage startup. I just recently started pitching to angels and brands like eBay. Yeah, watch my videos. I've got tons of videos on this subject that you can watch. Join my community. It's free. You can join it for free. There's lots of stuff going on there that can help you inside of the community as well. And then if you want to take it to the next level, I have a paid community as well on School as well. And there's a link to it on my free community if you want to spend a little bit more money. And I just started the community, and you get lots of help from me in there as well, more than these calls. Okay, anything else we got? Okay, so Nick says, thanks. Hopefully that was helpful, Nick. Any other questions? I'm going to drink some water, and I think we're going to go unless we got any more questions here. All right, going once on the questions, going twice on the questions, going 3 times on the questions. Looks like, got a thank you, which is good. All right, well, thank you, everybody. I think we're going to call it a day. Oh, Brenda asks, hopefully I spelled that right or pronounced that right at the end there. Hey, Brett, currently I am working on an app that takes the popularity of sports betting to the next level. How can I find investors in this sector? Well, we talked about this earlier, start with your network. That's the easiest way to go to find investors. Look around, go on LinkedIn. There are probably tons of investors. You've just got to be industrious. There's a ton you can do to find investors. And if you want to go spend some money or get a free trial, go to Crunchbase and go look there and go spend some money. That's what I would do. Silent Way asks, I'm developing a classified platform for the rural needs. I'm a non-tech founder, but I can code now. Congratulations. Find a tech co-founder for a non-tech co-founder is very hard. Can I ask the investor? I think that's what you're asking. Investor, can I ask for a tech co-founder? No. You got to find the person before you find the investor. Yeah, it's that simple. You're trying to reduce the risk of an investor. So you've got to go out and find this person. You've got to go out and convince this person. Think of it this way. That's the constraint on your business. So if you can't find that person, if you can't convince somebody to join you in your journey, then you're not going to be able to build your business. So this is the hurdle that you have to overcome. So this is your goal, is go find that person. I know it's not what you want to hear, but that's just reality. Okay, I hope that helps. All right, let's go on once. On the questions again, going twice on the questions again. I think we're done with questions. All right, well, I want to thank everybody for hanging in there with me today. I apologize for the technical difficulties at the beginning. Hopefully next week it'll be better. We'll do it at an earlier time next week. I'm trying to rotate the times to get to a worldwide audience. Take care, everybody. If you haven't already, join my free group on School. The link will be below this video when I post it. Just go there and you can get involved in the community, and it's growing at a pretty reasonable rate right now. So thanks a lot. Take care. Bye-bye.